Hello, and welcome to Glanbia's Dairy Focus. My name is Joris Somers, and I'm the Veterinary Adviser with Glanbia Ireland. In this week's episode, we will get an update on the breeding season so far, as well as some timely tips on making sure the stock bull is ready for action. We will hear from our milk quality team, and we will discuss parasite control in young stock during the grazing season. When it comes to parasite control in young stock during the grazing season, it's important to remember that calves are born without any immunity against parasites. The immunity is built up while being exposed to these parasites. So some exposure to parasites is important during the first and the second grazing season. However, too much exposure, an excess in parasites, will obviously hamper the calf's growth and could cause disease. Quite often you would see that calves might develop some scour during grazing, or if we're talking about lungworm, they develop a cough. If you see those symptoms, obviously calves need to be treated. But even before you see those symptoms, calves can experience a 20% in growth rate reduction just because they're being exposed to parasites. That's why you have to manage the calves while they're grazing. There are a few ways of tackling parasites, and the grazing management is the first step. Have you got clean pasture that the calves can graze? And with clean pasture, we really talk about either reseeded paddocks or paddocks that were cut for silage last year, or even paddocks that were only grazed by young cattle up until, let's say, August last summer, and not after that. That would still be considered a reasonably clean paddock. If calves are turned out onto those paddocks, they won't be exposed to a major, massive worm burden on that paddock in the spring. If you don't have that type of pasture, you have to manage it in a different way. The second part in parasite control in young stock is really about nutrition itself. Calves that are well fed are much better suited at coping with parasites. Calves that are under pressure nutrition-wise, they will suffer a lot more from a lower level of parasite burden. Good nutrition can also offset some of the negative impact parasites can have on the growth rates. The third part in parasite control in young stock during the grazing season is anthelmintic treatments. There are three approaches when it comes to anthelmintic treatments. If calves have access to a clean paddock and they can stay on that paddock for a long time, let's say 3 months, then you could opt for giving a long duration treatment. This requires calves to be grazing that pasture for 3-4 weeks to get some exposure to parasites, and then they are treated with a long acting. It could be an injection, it could be an oral bolus. The calves have to stay on that same bit of land for the next 2-3 months, for as long as that product is working. After that, a decision has to be made whether the calves have to move or whether you opt to choose a different product. That's a decision that needs to be made then. The second approach, if calves can't stay on clean paddock for a long duration and they rotate through different fields, is actually testing whether the calves need to be treated. The easiest method is using fecal egg counting. You can get pooled samples from 10 to 15 calves and check if they've been exposed to parasites. If the reading comes back from the lab saying they haven't been exposed enough, there is no need to treat those calves. And you can leave them on the fields for another few weeks, test again and see if they need it at that stage. The third approach in anthelmintic treatment is where you see clinical symptoms. Calves with scour, calves coughing. Obviously then treatment needs to happen. So here's Eamon Comiskey from our milk quality team with some important pointers on TBC.
Hello, I'm Eamon Comiskey, Milk Quality Manager with Glanbia Ireland. As we head into the summer months and towards peak production, it's critically important that we remain focused on milk quality. What I want to focus on today is TBCs. A key area in controlling TBC on farms is a properly functioning bulk tank. With most bulk tanks now operating an automatic wash system, it's very easy for an improperly washed tank to go unnoticed for a period of time. This will lead to a huge spike in TBCs. So for this reason, it's critically important that after each collection, we visually inspect the internal surfaces of the tank. So ensuring that the wash cycle is fully completed and using a good quality torch, visually inspect all internal surfaces paying particular attention to any potential blind spots, such as the back of your agitator paddles or the tank outlet. If any build-up is noted, this can indicate a failure at some point along the wash cycle. If possible, observe the tank as it goes through a full wash cycle. Things to watch out for are: is the washer sucking up detergent? Is the water hot enough? Is the water building up enough pressure to properly wash the surfaces of the tank? And is all rinse water being pumped out of the tank between cycles? If any issue is noted with the wash cycle, it's critically important that you report it to your service engineer as soon as possible so the problem can be fixed. Another key area in a properly functioning bulk tank is cooling capacity. As temperatures outside begin to warm up and more milk goes into the tank, cooling systems may come under pressure. Milk should cool to below 4 degrees at a maximum of 2 hours after milking. The longer the cooling time, the more chance for TBC levels to rise. Some tanks may simply not have the cooling capacity to cool milk this quickly and may benefit from the installation of a plate cooler, which will greatly assist in the cooling time of milk. Thanks for watching.
Thanks, Eamon. It's time now to focus our attention on what Doreen Corridan from Munster Bovine can tell us on using the stock bull successfully for the breeding in your herd.
Hi, I'm Doreen Corridan and I'm here today to talk about the 2020 breeding season and the role of the stock bull. Essentially what we're looking for is a sexual athlete to end up with 90% of those cows calved in 6 weeks and 9% empty rate. And the important points are: get that bull semen tested. Make sure the semen is okay, the bull is fit for purpose, his external and internal genitalia are normal. Analyse last year's performance of the older bull. Be careful of 2 bulls of the same breed you had last year performed well and you'd actually sold one this year. Keep an eye for 10 to 14 days after releasing the bulls. When you have more than 2 cows in heat per day, AI them. Watched when the repeats are due from a synchronised actually groups of cows. And then it's all about monitoring. Monitoring the herd, watching the number of repeats coming back, monitoring the bull for injury, lameness, high temperature, the bull getting lethargic, or the bull actually losing weight. So with bulls, if we speak about young bulls, the key here is to purchase them in advance, right? And why we purchase bulls in advance, believe it or believe it not, males suffer more from stress than actually females do, and also bulls are sold singly while females are sold in group. If we purchase the bull in advance, we can get him vaccinated with whatever the herd is vaccinated with and get his primary and booster shot into him before the breeding season. Secondly, we can also dung sample the bull to make sure he's carrying no parasitic burden into the actual breeding season. And finally, we can train the bull so we've time to do it, so he's competent at mating before we actually release him. Prior to releasing bulls with cows, it's critically important to get your vet to fertility test the bulls. Also, for older bulls, I'd encourage each of you to do is to look back on last year's performance. The key then is to get the ratio right. So what is the correct ratio? It varies from bull to bull. It's hard to generalize, but if we have to achieve high productive performance, we'd be talking about 30 empty cows with a mature bull and 10 to 15 empty cows with a young bull. A lot of people think that ratio is too low. It's not. To achieve high reproductive performance, you need those ratios. And this is key. Work out how many empty cows have I left, how many empty heifers have I left, how many bulls have you available, and then work out those ratios. 1 per 30 mature, 1 10 to 15 actually young bull. A couple of tips that help during the breeding season when you actually decide you have the correct amount of bulls to cover the amount of empty females you need mated is when you release your stock bull, continually AIing for the next 10 to 14 days after releasing your bull. This will avoid the lull you often get between AI and the stock bull, as a bull needs a bit of time to actually get into his routine. He needs a bit of time to understand and work with the females, and for those 10 to 15 days you're actually protecting yourself against that actual lull in calving. Secondly, any day you have more than 2 cows in heat per bull, or where there's consistently more than 2 cows coming in heat per day per bull. So 2 cows in heat per day in a 21 days, 42 empty cows. AI those cows on those days. Also, really watch out for synchronized groups of cows when they're due, because bulls can be overworked. And this is especially true with maiden heifers. If you have synchronized maiden heifers, all the repeats are actually going to come back together. And if you have a young bull, I would advise you to take him out for those 2 to 3 days, do heat detection, and then let back in the bull. As a young bull, in with that number of females coming back together, he will just get injured and then he'll actually be out for the actual season. The other thing then is with bulls, if you have 2 or more bulls, 24 hours on, 24 hours off work exceptionally well. Especially for young bulls, it gives them time to rest, it gives them time to eat. But also in mature bulls, it maximizes the work rate of each bull. Then the most important thing during the actual breeding season is to monitor your bulls. There are a number of ways of monitoring. We must monitor the herd and we must monitor the bull. The easiest way to monitor the herd is fit the bull with a chin ball, keep the pain topped up, and that will let you know morning and evening how many are actually bred. Equally with dairy cows, you may have electronic methods like this herd is here, or tail paint to actually monitor the bull, which is very important. Even if you just topped up the tail paint once a week, so I mean it will do you. And in maiden heifers, you could actually use scratch cards to monitor the bulls. Especially with maiden heifers, I'd use a chin ball and scratch cards, as often when you go to herd the maiden heifers when the bull is with them, they're all lying down and you may see very, very little activity. Then monitor your bull, especially older bulls for lameness or injury, but also younger bulls, they really suffer lameness injury. And pull out the lame bull. Identify what the problem is and rest the bull, as lame bulls will not get cows and calf. Also with young bulls, monitor them. Are they getting lethargic? Are they actually losing weight? Also, if the bull suffers any insults like a high temperature, take him out, get you a vet, treat him. And just remember, what you need is a sexual athlete. And if you think your bull is not a sexual athlete, more AI or else actually replace the bull. I suppose final, a word of warning, a bull is a bull, so we need to be careful out there and we need to stay safe. So good luck with your actual breeding season. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Doreen. Now, let's listen to Teagasc's George Ramsbottom with an update on the breeding season so far.
3 weeks into the breeding season is a kind of a milestone in the whole breeding calendar on dairy farms. The Teagasc target is to have 90% of your cows bred at this stage and 100% of your heifers. Nationally, we're a long way short of this, and on the average farm nationally, only 71% of the cows and 78% of the heifers have been bred after 3 weeks of breeding. These in turn then reflect themselves in a lower than optimum 6-week calving rate, which nationally stands at around 65%. So the first thing to do is have a look at the records and see what they're telling you. What percentage of your cows and maiden heifers have already been bred? The second thing to do then is to identify those cows and heifers that haven't yet been bred. And with the cows, they'll probably fall into 2 categories. Number 1, cows that are calved for more than 40 days. And then some of the earlier cows will form the second category of these animals. Best thing to do with the cows that haven't yet been bred, that are already more than 40 days calved, is to scan them. Get an experienced scanner or your vet in to have a look at them. And when they're scanned, he'll be able to determine if there's a problem with them or not. For some of them, the solution is time. And for all those cows, the solution will be to intervene and treat them. The second group of cows then are the late calving cows that haven't yet come cycling. And after around 30 days or so, gather a group of these cows together and synchronise them. There are protocols available widely on how best to get these cows cycling. The conception rate to that first service may not be great, but at least they've been bred. And the third category of animals then are the maiden heifers that haven't been seen breeding. If it's only a small number, what I'd recommend is that they're mixed with the cows and run separately from the heifers that have already been bred, who are typically gone with a stock bull at this stage. Keep the heifers that haven't yet been bred with the cows. They'll form a larger bulling mob, and it'll make them easier to detect when they come bulling. if you want to intervene, there are synchronization protocols there for these heifers as well that will help to induce cyclicity and get them breeding.
That concludes this week's episode. If you want any further information on any of these topics, please contact your local Glanbia representative or log on to glanbiaconnect.com.